Good afternoon. My name is Mary Gray, and I'm the director of the Ohio Arts Council's Riffe Gallery. And on behalf of the OAC board and staff and the gallery team, welcome. Today marks the final of 8 artist talks that we've done during the run of our 2017 juried biennial exhibition. A reminder that all of the talks are live streamed on Facebook, so if you didn't catch any of the past ones, or you want to share this one with some friends, you can find them on the Ohio Arts Council's Riffe Gallery Facebook page and on the Ohio Arts Council's Facebook page. Now I'd like to introduce you to today's guest artist, Melissa Vogley Woods. Melissa Vogley Woods is originally from and currently living in Columbus, Ohio. She received her BFA from Kansas City Art Institute and MFA from The Ohio State University. Vogley Woods is a cross-disciplinary artist focusing on notions of painting with works on canvas, sculpture, and performative video. She has taught at various institutions in and outside of Columbus, Ohio. She is an active member of the Columbus Arts Community, I should say, as an artist curator and Mint Collective member. Her most recent awards include the Ohio Arts Council Individual Excellence Awards for Craft and Sculpture, the Greater Columbus Arts Council Dresden Residency, and most recently, the Greater Columbus Arts Council Individual Artist Award. Please welcome Melissa Vogley Woods.
Thank you, Mary, for the introduction, and thank you for having this kind of show, which is awesome opportunity to get your work shown with a bunch of awesome other artists. I think that's the best part about shows like this. So, as Mary said, I work in many different mediums, and a lot of you probably already have, from what Mary said, picked up on some of them. I have a painting undergraduate degree, and my master's is in printmaking. I focus in sculpture and painting and video. In my videos, I make architectural models, so that's also like I deal a little bit with architecture in some of those videos. And I also, no, I think that's probably just about it. That's kind of like the way that I teach and all those things too. But in my practice, it's generally pretty multidisciplinary. However, it tends to focus on ideas of painting. I feel like I'm always sort of grappling with a constraint that you could call painting. So this piece itself is acrylic on canvas. It has marble dust mixed into some of the paint to create kind of a matte finish. It also has glazes put in, and I use that to kind of draw attention to the fact that it's a painting. I like to use glazes and matte surfaces to like just remind you that it's materiality. So I'm really interested in that element of painting. The title of this is called Green Gaze from Below, and I started this piece and a series of, I believe there were about 9 other paintings that I finished at an artist residency. And on my way to the artist residency, I stopped off in this tiny little museum because I had 1 hour to kill. And in that museum show were Hudson River School paintings, which I've never been interested in before in my life. So I just had an hour to kill. I went in and I'm looking at these paintings. And at the time, of course, I'm like, yeah, good. Nothing's really going into the system, but just somehow they super affected me like the next day. So this is how influences roll in. You don't know where they're coming from. There was something about those landscapes that triggered something in my work. So the minute I went to this residency and started working, I immediately started to go into an idea of landscape, which before, I'm going to show you guys work that I did before this. It's not dealing with landscape at all. So the landscape quality is this, can you see kind of, does it feel landscapey to you? So I started to kind of think about what is a landscape, what's the point of operating within a structure of a landscape. The Hudson River School paintings were made in a time where they were really sort of getting control of nature, and they became interested in looking like this romanticized idea of nature, its vastness, but also the fact that humans are controlling it. And I think that is kind of like the thing that I became interested in, that it was controlling, that it was this picture of a beautified control of nature And in my work, that sort of connects to sort of my topic in my work. So also, another thing about this painting is that, and where I get, is this, from the Hudson River School paintings, is this inner glow that comes from deep within the painting. And that there's this glowing color, glowing light, luminosity that comes out, and there's things blocking it. So I'm kind of exploring a little bit of this blocking and glowing from within, which also touches on my topics that I address in my work. These folded forms are originally from kind of the image of stacked quilts. So I have a history of working with quilts in my work in the past. And so I have a visceral connection to just the quilt itself. But I'm interested in quilt because it's connected to women's work. It's something that's kind of not as valued in the arts as paintings. I'm always interested in the hierarchy of material and making in art. And the folded quilt became a metaphor for me of like a curated history, because history is curated through one perspective, and it's the perspective of the people in power. And so that is kind of where the quilt comes to mind for me. It's a thing that is undervalued. It's can be folded up and stored away and stacked away, and also sort of like doesn't really hold value. Like you find quilts being used as paint drop cloths, and they're cut up to make like stockings. Like, just I see these things and I'm just like, no. But so the folded form became like a metaphor for basically for women's voices who have been obscured by curated history for thousands and thousands of years. And that's what this is. And then also in my work I reference the figure. I don't know if you can see that in there, like a little figurative. This is a little bit figurative to me. And in some of my works it's more obvious than others. Like these could almost look like intestines. Sometimes they look like folded elbows, or stomachs. So in a way, this is a little bit of a figure here. Also, in this series of paintings, in my paintings that I do now, I balance between these tropes in painting, which would be the still life, the landscape, and figure painting. So if you think of paintings that you've seen in general that aren't just pure abstraction, there's kind of these different ways to go. And I also like to manipulate between these things because I feel like as a female author, I'm interested in the figure becoming an object, and what happens when you turn the figure into an object, or you play with that place of object versus self versus figure versus space, and where does the value get assessed. And this is sort of a place that I play with in my abstraction. And I used to be a figure painter, and I used to always use figures in my work. But I just got to a point where I felt like that was way too narrow, and so I went into abstraction. This is also the first painting that I did that has arches in it, which was a huge addition to my visual vocabulary. When I painted this first painting, it was not necessarily to think about the arch. It was kind of referencing Florine Stettheimer's work, and I will show you those over here. You know that work? Do you recognize the colors? Right? The color palette is really pulled from Florine Stettheimer's work. She was a painter back in the 20s who was sort of like obscure. Like she didn't show her paintings because she didn't have to. She was really wealthy. But she also just didn't value her paintings and didn't want to share them. She kept them as these super personal objects, and it was sort of this, no one's going to take my stuff seriously anyway. I'm just going to do them for myself. Denial of the system. When she died, she requested that all of her paintings get burned, which is not uncommon for like women artists and sometimes artists that are on the outside, that they just want to take it all with them, sort of. Thank God her sister didn't burn all the paintings. And you can see them at the Met in New York if you ever go to New York. They're actually quite large. They're much larger than you think they would be. And I pulled from that painting the arch because I just saw in it a form that felt metaphorically connected to sort of what I like to try to what I think about when I paint, I'm not necessarily illustrating these things for you to get out of the painting. Like, I don't want you to look at this and be like, there's a feminist painting. It's kind of more like I am processing this through metaphor, and you're going to get what you're going to get out of it, but I know what I'm thinking when I'm making the work. So I will show you her paintings, and you'll see this little platform table kind of carpet thing you'll see it in her paintings, and I'll point that out. I was interested in this isolation, this form of isolation. It's like kind of metaphorical for isolation. In a lot of my work, I think about histories that compile, that build on each other, histories that erase other people's histories. And so I'm really kind of thinking about people in history and how things come and go and how you don't hear, just this sort of thing is what I'm really trying to get across, is a overcoming and erasure of existence between different forms. Did I get it all? Okay, a few more things. This edge here is also pointing to the fact that it's a painting. So on a lot of my paintings, I like to highlight the edge. Just so you know it's painting. I'm not trying to make a picture of a thing that's real. So I'm very material, so that is why you'll see that I'm getting into sculpture again. And I'll talk a little bit about that on the PowerPoint. But I think of my work also just very sculpturally. And this really thin line is something that's coming back into some new work of mine. And it's, again, destabilizing everything else. So I like to just add elements that destabilize other elements. I like to cut through things. It's thinking about where something begins and how it's disrupting another, and then where it goes down from there. And then the arch, I'll talk more over there about it. But in the beginning, it was like a shelter. I felt like it was like this interesting little shelter form that she seemed to use a lot in her paintings. I was trying to think about why would she be using those. I'm going to put it in here and see what happens. And then these other arches came in and felt a little bit more like, they felt different than the back arches. So I started to research arches at this point, and then I'll get into the arch talk. Okay, so here's a couple Hudson River School painters. And you just take those in for a minute, and then you can kind of see sort of where I was pulling from. Like, I was really just sort of pissed, too, when I went in the museum. I was just like, these paintings. I'm like, where's the women artists? Like I always do every time I go to any museum. There were women artists back then. But so then it just got to me, and it infected my work without even thinking it. I absorbed it. So this inner light, this glowing from inside. There are other. I don't like to put a lot of slides up, so I don't have that many. It's like 15. But we'll just hang on these because there's other artists like the Futurists, outsider artists that kind of worked with like utopian concept, turn of the century. Like Hilma af Klint, or did I say the name? Hilma af Klint is another artist. Variety of artists who seem to be sort of on this outsider art kind of realm are always working with this strange sense of glow also. And I also look at those works. Futurist paintings, it's like this explosion of light coming through. So I've just always been a little bit interested in the glow. And here, George Inness was my favorite of the work. Just, I think, because it was getting a little bit more abstract. He was a little bit at the end of the Hudson River School time period, and just the glow is even more extreme. I really love the idea of the trees as blockades to the light, and so it was sort of like, I like the system of something trying to get through but being blocked. Okay, there's Florine, right? Didn't I thieved that right out from under her. Good thing she's dead. So you can see the little, everyone's on a little platform. They're like on a rug or a couch or on a thing. They're on a rug. They're just on these little islands, It's just so strange to me that it's something that she does, like that person's, they're on an island. They're on a little poof, this person's on a round thing. Like they're all separate, and it's just something about that separateness. They're on their own little islands. It just really kind of came to seem like something I needed to use in my work because of the isolation, and so I pulled from that. And then this red swooshy top thing that goes over, like the curtain in this curvy step, is something that she uses a lot in her work. And that's sort of like the beginning, that's literally the beginning of where I started to think about the arch form. It's new to me to be using the whole canvas, so I'll show you that. So it was sort of like this new thing to think about, like, well, what do I put behind the thing, my subject? What is all this back here? Now it's all completely combined. Here's one more. I mean, look at that. Really burn these, please. Yeah. Right? Little island. And then the little curtains and the little blobby island. Like, this is just because it's, happy holidays. But just something really funny about that you don't know where these influences are going to come, because I literally saw this painting, like her paintings, like 3 years back, and didn't think anything of it. Like, nothing. Oops. It wants me to join. Come on, I think I have to escape. So. Okay. This is another artist that, Emily Carr, used to ride out on her horse. See the dates there, like turn of the century, out in the middle of nowhere in Canada where the grizzly bears are, and paint outside in the woods. She was a member of this group. I think they were called the Five. Sorry, I didn't look that up before. But anyway, she's not counted as a member of this group, but she was like in the group, but she was a woman, so she just like didn't count in the group, which is ridiculous, but who painted from nature up in Canada. And I really also am very influenced by her use of the whole canvas, and that you're in the circumstance. So this was sort of like what helped me get away from what I was doing before, which I will show you. And real abstract qualities going on there, right? Emily Carr, good work. Okay. So this is what I was doing before. This is like 2.5 years ago. So quite the different painting. But what you see is like the beginning of my work thinking about the stack, the folded quilts, the isolation. I was really at this time thinking about one stack against the other, and some overlapping and some using the previous stack to go on top of. And it's kind of hard to see because these pictures aren't the best, but this is the glowing form that's on top of another form. So there's some overlay happening between the forms. Then I started to, so this is about a year later, I started to exaggerate the different folded forms and play with their texture and play with the painted quality. So when I first started this whole painting situation, I was doing lots of sculpture, whole house installations, and videos. And so this was like a return to painting, which I hadn't done painting in a long time. And I had decided I'm going to paint on canvas, and that's it. I'm going to paint on a regular rectangle like painters do, and that's what I'm going to do from now on. I'm never going to do sculpture again. I gave all my sculpture materials away to all my students and walked away from the whole situation and just started painting. So then it was funny because now I'm doing sculpture again. Never say never, So I started to think about the background, because before it was just this neutral situation. And so it started to, they're coming out of the stack, and I wasn't quite sure what to do with the background. And so really the only element at play here is the stack, the transparent, the more dominant, and then it starts to get this painty glow. So I'm just kind of trucking along here thinking about where this is going to go. And then finally I start to break out more. The stack is now going off the page. It's coming off the bottom, and the painting on the background here is starting to become more thought out and placed. This painting was really influenced by El Greco. And a lot of times whenever I'm painting, I think this is true for most painters. Like, you're always then looking at painting somehow. It's just more than, when I was a sculptor, I'd look at everything, but like with painting, you just get all focused in on painting. So I was really looking at El Greco. And El Greco helped me break out more. I got messier, and I was looking at how he was messy, and he was an outsider art. He wasn't an outsider artist like we know, but like he was real. Like, he painted at the same time as Caravaggio. Like, you know, it's just really different, you know? So I just got interested in the paintingness and scraping and this crazy drip thing breaking out. And this was maybe a month before that. And so from this was like getting towards the end. I was getting ready to go to residency. I painted these things. And I was heading off to MassMocha for my residency. And on the way, I see the landscape, and then that happened. And then these happened. So these are the paintings I did at that time. So I made a huge jump. And this is why it's important, anyone who's an artist or whatever you do, that you get out of your place and you go someplace else and just, you make big jumps. It just happens. It's time away from your system or whatever it is you set up. So this is a transcendental slice beam. I think that's his name. And this is soft bottom. And so these are all about the same size as that. I think they're a little taller. And they've got the landscape happening. They have a manipulation of the entire canvas, the entire frame system. Picture plane is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so, and then there were like 8 other paintings, but I don't have them all up here because I'm going to jump into. I started to think about this arch. So of course, like in my studio, I just started researching arches. I'm like, well, what is that art? Like, that form is so interesting. It's like it's like protective. And then I just started to research everything I can do about art. Anytime I get into a subject, I go like bonkers with the research part in the beginning. So I was listening to Yale lectures on like Roman architecture, and that's when I came across the Flavian Palace, which was built. It's like 60. How do you say AD now? There's a different way they say that, but you know what I mean.
Common era.
Common era. Thank you. 60 Common era. He was an emperor who was kind of like Trump. He came after like some better emperors, and then just became sort of dictatorly and wanted to have this massive palace built, and he hired this architect to design these giant semi-dome arches in every room so he could stand in them and project out his divinity, because he really wanted to be a god. His father died, he deemed him a god. His brother died. Some people think he killed his brother, but anyway, he made him a god. And so Domitian wanted to be a god, but there was no one to make him a god, because he was alone and everyone hated him. So he just had this ridiculous palace, which is the most ruined thing in Rome. When you go to Rome, you'll see everything on the palace, and there's nothing. It's just completely ruined. And I went there just like 2 weeks ago. I just got back, and these are pictures from Rome and the Flavian Palace. And so the half circle project, it becomes now in my work like a projector. I think of this form as like a thing that can project out, but it's also symbolic. It can be symbolic for a system that's disruptive to the folded forms. So in my little narrative, that's kind of like where they fit in. And so these are from the Flavian Palace. Let me see. I had to Google this picture. This is one of his big half-dome things. He also had them lined with really shiny marble so that he could see behind him because he was really paranoid he was going to get assassinated, which is what happened. He was killed by his Senate. So, and I really got into looking at him this year, of course, and I also really felt like he was this Trumpy kind of character, and this psychosis of building up your system so big that you're going to always keep power and you're going to go all the way up to the top to be a god. It's just like a funny thought that I think still exists. Like, keep that, I'm going to get mine, so. Okay, so right before I went to Rome, the kind of culmination, I don't know if you can see it here because the screen's a little, there's a very, very faint arch painted on the wall there. Can you guys see that? It's incredibly faint. And so I really wanted it to be just tonally almost exactly the same color as the wall. This is in the Columbus Museum of Art, and this is so I paint, the room itself is a big room with two big walls that are facing each other, and I have paintings kind of hanging on these walls, and then these arches are painted behind the paintings. And they are just, if you think of those as patriarchy, they're just back there always. They're just behind the scenes. They're just humming in the background, like a low hum. Not always so low. But for me, I'm housing all these things around this feminist act, but really, it's in a way, you can think of it as any kind of system, any kind of thing that's behind another thing that just doesn't go away. And so there are moments when these paintings line up with the arches, and there are moments when they don't. And I wanted it to kind of operate like that, that there's this old, there's this new in front, they may work with each other, they may not, there's an alignment, there's not an alignment. And also this painting, which was my biggest painting, and then one of my tiny paintings, the big painting is getting into this exploration of getting rid of color and just going to a binary, a black and white. And so that is what now I'm working a lot with, black and white as a foundation for the paintings. I start in black and white, and then I'll bring in some color. The color is like this interloper into this conflict between the binary tones. I'm going to try and make sure I don't run out of time. So the black and white came from the idea of scotopic vision. Does anyone know what that is? It's like if you go into the dark at night, your cones close and your rods take over in your eye. So you only see black and white at night. That way you can distinguish between forms, and you can survive better because you break everything down to a binary and you can run through things easier than if you saw all the color, you'd be distracted. So it's tunnel vision, it's breaking things down to a yes and a no, which is just against what I feel like we are coming to as a society. There's an opening and there's a closing in our society right now. So it's like I'm interested in thinking about this binary through working with black and white. I am still using color, but a lot of black and white. And here's another shot of it with the arch. There's the arch back here. There's the painting. And so there's an area where there's no color, there's areas where there's color, and then there's areas where the color is like just faded out. This painting has a lot of this play with the marble dust and the glazes. Okay, so this is the most recent stuff, and this painting's over at Hammond Harkin. This is not the exact sculpture that's over at Hammond Harkin, but it is similar. And this one will be in Athens soon. But this is Scaiola. So this is like something that I've been studying while I've been doing these other things. And Scaiola is a technique that was invented sometime in the late 1500s, and it is a plaster technique, and it's a secret trade. So I had to do a lot of research to find someone to teach it to me because you cannot find how to do it anywhere because I looked for many years. And I found someone who had taken it from a master craftsman in Rome. I actually contacted him. He told me about a student he had in New York, upstate New York somewhere, and then I went and took this class over the summer. And so it is sort of like a sculptural personification of painting. It's pigments. It's a white matter, which you can, if you think of that as the canvas, you're just mixing the pigments into this material, and you can make sculpture. No one makes sculpture with it, like I make sculpture with it, and I'll show you what it normally looks like. And so I'm kind of innovating this medium, and here's two more. They're about this big. They're very heavy and very dense, and they hang on the wall. Here's a detailed shot. Now I'm going to, can you guys see that? See all that crazy action in there? So I'm going to show you a little video. Let's see. Yeah. I'm going to show you the short one, which I think is this. Okay, so this is making the material to add pigment to. You make all the pigments separately, and it's a lot about consistency. You can add more plaster basically to thicken up some of them. There's a delayed drying time, so then you have a lot of time to manipulate the mass. And you build layers inside of this like giant blob by stacking it and cutting it and stacking it. And it's really like icing. Like you can't pick it up, it would just, so you have to really, it's just very soft, and then when it dries really hard. And then when you scrape away, you can see what you did on the inside. So there's a lot of, that's why it takes so much time to learn it, because there's a lot of, you can't exactly manipulate it exactly how you want it. It just takes a little bit of, you just got to do it over a period of time, and then you figure it out. So with this form, I've been doing a lot of exploring of like the folded forms. So what I'm working on now is sort of these black and white based paintings, working on the folded forms as sculptural things. And I also do video, which I'm not going to show you any of my videos, and they're all on my website, but that it's a whole nother thing over here. But that with some connection, but I'm currently working on projects where I pull all of these elements together into one piece. So that's sort of what I'm working on now. But since I was just in Rome, I wanted to show you some 17th century, 1600 scaiola that I found in some churches, so you can see its original form. This is at the Villa Farnese, which is just like some rich person's house. This is all scaiola. So it looks like marble, but it's not. That's what it used to be used for. They would put it on the walls and mold it, polish it. This is all fake marble. Cool, huh?
Yeah.
You would never know it's not marble, too. People were looking at me. Everyone's looking at the paintings, and I'm just like, I think it's scaiola. And you can't tell. There's little tells. There's tiny little clues. Especially, you're really lucky if it's broke, if there's a crack in it or a chip, and you can look underneath. But even if there's a crack, like marble cracks, so even if there's a crack in it, you can't tell. But you have it's very difficult to tell. Here is this was in the Santa Maria something. Anyone who's going to Rome, just email me. I'll tell you where to go. This is a really famous piece that I didn't even see when I first went there because I thought it was marble. Because I just kept going back to some churches, and then I figured out that's scaiola. And then I'd have to look online and try to find cross-reference, get some backup. So I've got a database that I'm going to be sharing on Facebook, and you could probably find it on my website. This is what happens when you make a scaiola and then you do inlay with more scaiola. So you can make your form, you can carve out grooves and shapes, and then refill it, polish it down, and then do it again, and just build complexity. And this is just insane piece from 1600s.
How do you cut scaiola?
You just like exactly like same as marble. You just It's a very hard. It can be softer. First, and look at this crazy face. Isn't that gorgeous? You just go in a church and it's just sitting there. You literally walk in a church and there's the Caravaggio. You're like, it's just there. You're like, no one's around. Well, tourists. But you just walk in and there it is. Okay, so that's kind of one more. This was the first one I ever found because I didn't know if it was or if it wasn't. And it's, all the research on it's in Italian, so I'm like, and in German. So there's little clues about the edge. If the crack goes through two different colors and it's the same crack, then you can also know, but it's like if you find little chips like this, you can see inside that it's concrete and it's not. Also, there would be seams. There'd be different kinds of seams on the marble. So they also try to mimic marble really hard, so sometimes they put in fake seams, which make it even more difficult. But this was the first one that I found, and I just couldn't believe how gorgeous it was. And the guy in the church was like, oh, here, would you like a audio guide? I'm like, did you know this is Scaiola? He was like, what? The whole room, this entire, like that whole dome up there, it's all Scaiola. So they made it all in concrete, and then it was all coated with this, and you have to slice it, and put it on, and sand it down. It was just, it was mind-blowing, honestly.
So those tall walls, is that one big slab?
No, it's like, yeah, do you, like in the video where I had the mushy blob? It's that. So they make a giant, or like a bigger mushy blob with the same colors. They just have a recipe written down so they can repeat the exact same mixture. And they make this like gradient by stacking different tones on top of each other, smush it down, cut that in half, stack it, and then you slice it, and you take that like very soft blob and you literally just plop it on the wall. Take another slice and you plop it on the wall. And you have to arrange the stripes in ways that like, it looks good. It's crazy. And it's like icing, I'm telling you. Like, you know how you can pick up clay? You can't pick it up. You have to support the entire thing. So a lot of times they'll lay it out on canvas or like burlap, and then take the burlap with 4 guys and like slap it up on the wall.
So could you put it in a form and cut it and install it?
Yes, and I think that's what they did with the molding. Some of the molding, I think there were molds.
Okay.
And there's very few people using it as a sculptural medium. So it's brand new, kind of like I'm pushing its boundaries for what it can do. But it looks just like marble, and you can go over to Ham Harkin. I know I've said this like 12 times, sorry, but like you have to see it in person. I was really tempted to bring a piece here, but I was afraid like I would be, like that's too much. But they're there, and you can see them. And we also have a little piece of the Scaiola that you can like hold and touch and like rub on your cheek. And you'll see that it like is exactly this. You can't hardly tell the difference. So if you also ever go to Rome, email me and I will tell you where it is in which church, because you also will not be able to tell. So I think that was everything I wanted to tell you guys, and we're right at we have 10 minutes for questions. So